Welcome in to episode 2 of the Stateline Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Kasey Boone. Alongside me, as always, the great Josh Miller.
Here we go, another packed week in the NBA, and we got a lot to get into today. Lebron and Curry turned back the clock of time. The Cavaliers outduel the champions in the Garden. Is Detroit legit? The Suns continue to slide. All of these and much, much more.
Before we get into that, we'd like to thank all of you for listening to the first episode. We got a lot of feedback and a lot of support, and we'd love to continue to hear improvements that you all think that we can do to make the show as good as possible. And now I think it's time to get into this Celtics versus Cavaliers game. The Cavs get a big win, 123-116 in the Garden. No Porzingis, but the Cavs were really impressive. They had to come back from a 20-point lead at one point for Boston. Donovan Mitchell explodes for 41. Tatum has 46. Jaylen Brown, 37. Josh, do you have any thoughts about this game?
Yeah, I'm just going to start out with saying Porzingis, Jrue Holiday, both being out of this game definitely affected the late game matchups here. And I'm going to be honest, I saw this game, it was 25-3 to start the game. Boston was not missing a shot. Derek White, Tatum, Brown, everybody was hitting threes. I said, all right, this game is over already, and there's just no way that Cleveland will be able to match up with them in a 7-game series. And then they continued to crawl and fight back and made their way and had it close, maybe a 5-point game at halftime, if I remember. Had it built all the way back before halftime. And once they got to the late game situations, it was a continued event of let's hunt Sam Hauser, sorry about that. Sam Hauser, they were hunting him, and how could you blame him, especially when you're missing Jrue Holiday? And Donovan Mitchell was scoring on him at will, and as was Darius Garland. On the other side, Darius Garland is continued to be a problem for Cleveland defensively in the one-on-one. But I will be honest, Cleveland did surprise me here just because they were down by so much, clawed their way back into it. I definitely gained some respect for Cleveland in the playoffs going forward just because of this win. And I understand Boston was missing 2 of their best players, but I could definitely see this series going 6, more than likely 7 games. I really hope we see this in an Eastern Conference Finals.
A few big things stand out to me. Boston played 7 guys in this game, not including the last minute of the game where they threw in some scrubs. They got pretty much 0 bench production whatsoever. Having to move Hauser and Horford into the starting lineup really lessens their ability to go deep. Tatum had to play 40 minutes, Derek White 40 minutes, Horford was up there at 37 minutes. That's just not sustainable for a team, and we saw that as they only scored 42 in the second half after scoring 38 in the first quarter. They got crushed because of the depth here, whereas Cleveland was able to go 10 guys deep. They got production from guys like Ty Jerome, newly acquired DeAndre Hunter, who I think is going to be a very key piece for them down the stretch in the playoffs. Very underrated addition at the deadline. He's been averaging 18 this season with the Hawks and now with Cleveland. I think this game, you got to put an asterisk on it because there's no Porzingis, no Jrue Holiday, but you've got to like the way that Cleveland showed some fight. We talked last week that we don't know if Cleveland has that go-to scorer that can win you these type of games. Mitchell shut us up a little bit, having 41. Put the team on his back, really, in the scoring department, with Garland shooting 9 of 23, struggling from the field a little bit. Mobley with a big double-double, 17 and 12. You got to like the way that Cleveland was able to fight back and get a big win on the road in the Garden.
How about the way Ty Jerome has been playing as of late? He has been unbelievable.
Ridiculous.
And, I mean, he came over with Kenny Atkinson from Golden State, a guy out of Virginia, didn't hasn't shown a whole lot in his career, but has really hit his stride as of late. And going back to last Sunday when my Memphis Grizzlies played Cleveland, he was unbelievable. I mean, he's been a great addition for them off the bench this year since he's gotten healthy.
Last 10 games for Todd Jerome, he's averaging 13.8, shooting 56% from the field, 42% from three. That's a guy that I don't think Cleveland expected to play this type of role going into the year. And if they get production from guys like that, if they can continue to get production out of DeAndre Hunter and Okoro off the bench, that's going to be a tough team to beat. Really tough team to beat going into the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs.
We can get into the Detroit Pistons, man. They have been the most shocking team to me personally this year, and the job that J.D. Bickerstaff, who was let go from Cleveland last year, and it's obviously worked out for both teams as they went on a 8-game winning streak, or I believe it's an 8-game winning streak.
Yeah, I believe so. Beating
Boston on their home floor, in Detroit, excuse me. And they have really been playing great basketball as of late. Cade Cunningham, is this guy going to be I believe he's going to be an All-NBA player this year. 25 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and 9.4 assists per game this year for your boy Cade Cunningham.
Sneaky MVP candidate for sure. There's no doubt. They've got wins over Boston and the Clippers within that 8-game win streak. Those are two legit playoff teams. They've got the Clippers coming up again. They've got the Warriors. They've got some teams down the stretch, the Thunder again. It's going to be a big test, but they're sitting at 6th in the Eastern Conference with 34 wins already. That's a very impressive team. Cade Cunningham, like you said, I think he's going to be top 5 in MVP voting at the end of the year. He's been incredibly impressive. He's averaging, like you said, 25 a game. Jalen Duren, a big physical guy down low, averaging a double-double. Like we talked about with Zubac and the Clippers, not a lot of teams have these big physical, big guys that can go in and impact the game, get rebounds, play defense. That's an advantage that they've got. Ron Holland has really been stepping up recently. A young rookie that people were here and there on, thought he'd spend a lot of time down in the G League. He's given them some production. A guy that doesn't get talked about enough, who's averaging 16 points per game this year, shooting 42% from three, Malik Beasley, is just going off.
He's been unbelievable.
Going off. Against Boston, he scored 26. A couple nights before that in Atlanta, he scored 24. He's shooting the lights out right now, and that's a big help for that Pistons team.
And their 8-game winning streak did come to a halt against the Denver Nuggets as Jokic was far too much, having 23, 17, and 15 off of a week where he also broke his personal best assist record against the Indiana Pacers earlier in the week with 19. He was a little too much for Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren. He got them in foul trouble, and Jamal Murray has continued to hit his shot, but I do believe the Nuggets have some issues defensively that we touched on last week a little bit, and it's going to be on full display today in a couple hours as they match up with the Boston Celtics.
And we saw it a little bit when they played against the Bucks a few nights ago. Giannis was able to kind of do what he wanted. Brook Lopez scoring 22, Gary Trent going for 15. There's some clips coming out of that game of Jokic's defensive effort, which is something that I've preached as a concern for them. I think he's got to address that and give a little bit better effort, especially when you got a guy running right at your face and you kind of step away, not even wanting to make a contest at it. But like you said, the game against Boston, the last two champions, this is a heavyweight fight tonight. It's going to be a very interesting game. In the Garden, do you think the Nuggets have a chance to pull off a big win here?
Absolutely not. The only way is if they allow Jokic to be a scorer and his teammates are hitting shots. But I don't see personally how they're going to be able to defend the Celtics. All the Celtics do is get open threes, and every time I watch the Denver Nuggets, it's just a 3-point shootout for the opposing team, and if they have good shooters, they're not going to win. Although, Porzingis and Drew Holiday
both doubtful. Jaylen Brown questionable. Aaron Gordon questionable for the Nuggets. So we might be missing a few key pieces on each side, which could, like the Cleveland game for Boston, impact the way we kind of view it. It might not be as crystal clear how we kind of view these teams based on this game, but you're still going to have Jokic, you're still going to have Murray, you're still going to have Tatum out there. It's a heavyweight fight, and it should be a really nice game to kind of dive into tonight. Along with several other premier games, the Clippers and Lakers tonight, I think, is a massive one that's got playoff implications like we talked about, and we'll get into the Lakers here in a little bit. The Knicks and the Heat are trying to fight to keep their spot in the play-in. The Knicks, Karl Anthony Towns kind of banged up a little bit. They're kind of reeling with some injuries. Got a big win against the Grizzlies the other night. And another team that just got a big win against the Grizzlies, your San Antonio Spurs. You hate to hear the news about Greg Popovich. They said he had an emotional team meeting that really inspired some of the players because of the way he described his rehab from his stroke, saying he doesn't want to hinder the team if he's not 100%. You got to think that motivated the boys a little bit. They were able to go in against the Memphis Grizzlies last game of the rodeo road trip, get a big win. Grizzlies without John Morant. Jaren Jackson goes for 42, but the rook Steph Castle comes up big, scoring 24, leading scorer for the Spurs. Good things happen when you play that guy. Been saying it. Mitch Johnson needs to find a way to get him at least 30 minutes a night. Front runner for Rookie of the Year. Had several big games recently. You got any thoughts about your team losing to a team that should be losing every single game they're playing right now?
Absolutely embarrassing. And what has happened to my Memphis Grizzlies this week? It's been a bad week. We've lost 3 in a row. We played the Cleveland Cavaliers, couldn't defend them. We played the Knicks Friday night. They scored a crazy amount of points. Had to score 150 points just to beat the falling Phoenix Suns in overtime. And now we allowed the Spurs without Wemby to score 130 points. It's embarrassing. And I mean, good win for the Spurs.
Give up 46 in the second quarter.
But I mean, it's just our defense is not operating. Our offense, we have the second best offense in the league behind Cleveland, and we've yet to have a game where we score under 100 points, and we're the only team in the league that can say that. But this defense is very concerning, and we've slid. We were sitting at the 2 seed pretty much all season. Now we have slid to the 4 seed behind the Nuggets as a 2 seed, and the Lakers have now jumped us into the 3 seed. But yeah, that message from Pop obviously worked against us, and I'm embarrassed. I'm just going to be honest. It's embarrassing the way we've played this week. The good thing is there's enough time to get on a run here, but our defense is concerning come playoff time.
Pretty cool to see Fox's first game winner as a Spur. We're going to see a lot of that moving forward. Another topic I'd like to get into, Anthony Edwards suspended 1 game for the Timberwolves as they drop a game to the Jazz. Pretty embarrassing. He got his 16th technical of the season. They lose 117-116 to the tanking Utah Jazz. You just can't have it if you're Anthony Edwards. It's embarrassing. If you're the Timberwolves, I'd be very upset. You got to keep your temper in check. Do you like the idea of after 16 technicals for there to be a suspension?
I'm going to be honest, I do like this, and I honestly wish it was a little bit less, just because one concern I do have with the NBA is the players complaining about every single call, and Anthony Edwards is probably the worst at this right now. And
LeBron James is still in the league.
LeBron James, I mean, a lot of the key players, Jokic, Luka, all these guys do it, but Anthony Edwards lost his temper, threw the basketball into the crowd, and I mean, I think the league needs to send a message to. It starts with the star players. I don't hate the suspension at all. I wish these guys would stop complaining as much as they do. It's a little hard to watch. But
we even saw a few years ago, Draymond Green got suspended for a finals game because of the
Yeah.
technical.
Now that I will say that was a little far. At NBA Finals, we can't be doing suspensions for that. But a regular season and fines, I do think could go a long way in helping this issue. And I don't hate the rule. I'm just gonna say that. And Anthony Edwards has been unbelievable. He's a potential face of the league candidate. Whether if he says he wants to be that or not, he plays well enough to potentially be that. He's got the flash ability, and especially where they're sitting in the Western Conference, they can't afford to be losing him. But I do like the league setting a precedent with this rule, and we've seen it with Draymond in the past. He's been suspended, for which he's had much more issues, but I believe last year or the year before he got a 25-game suspension due to his technical issues. And it's something that Anthony Edwards needs to fix in order to get the full potential out of himself, in my opinion.
Transition a little bit. I want to start getting into the outlook of a few of these Western Conference teams that are in the playoff race that may or may not have murky futures. We don't really know kind of what's going on with them. A big one I'd like to get into right away is the future of the Dallas Mavericks. Kind of take a look at how the Luka trade shapes out. They've gotten good production from Max Christie. We don't really know what kind of the plan from Nico Harrison is. He said that this trade sets them up for the future. What does that mean? Will Kyrie sign with them long term? We don't really know. Do we think they're title contenders if they're healthy? Do you have a few thoughts about the Dallas Mavericks here as we head into the back half of this year?
Yeah, I'd like to touch on almost each of these questions, and I'm going to start with Kyrie because he's been playing at an extremely high level this season, and especially without Luka. And I do think he will re-sign in the offseason just because they were the team that was willing to go and trade for him. They showed that they can trust him with all the sort of smoke that was around Kyrie Irving when he was with Brooklyn. They put all that aside and said, we're going to trade our future for you. And I do think he will re-sign because of the potential they have next season. With the 3 7-foot big men that they have, I think that they could potentially come out of the West next year. And I do like the short-term future of this team. Although, if we're going to get into the long-term future, I have no answers because you traded away arguably the best player in your franchise's history other than Dirk Nowitzki, who stayed there his entire career.
Who wanted to stay there his entire career.
He wanted to stay there. I don't like, especially, if you're going to move Luka Doncic, that's one thing. But the package that you got back, yes, Anthony Davis is unbelievable player, although his age for this trade was a little concerning to me. Max Christie is going to make a lot of money in this league. I really do like Max Christie. He could fit on any team, any given day. We saw that in his first game with the Mavericks, so he came in and was playing very well. But the fact that the Dallas Mavericks did not get Austin Reeves in this trade, and I don't exactly know the whole contract, how they have to merge it with the contracts and whatnot during the trade. But I think it was an absolute failure that the Dallas Mavericks did not get at least 2 to 3 more first-round picks. And, Austin Reeves, he might be the best third star in the league right now. I think he's definitely shown that ability this year, and in my opinion, he should be wearing a Dallas Mavericks uniform because of how great Luka Doncic is. I will say, the brief moment we did get to see Anthony Davis with the Dallas Mavericks against the Houston Rockets, it looked very, very scary, and he was playing with the vengeance I hadn't seen in a long time. I do think next year I could potentially pick them to come out of the West if they keep their team together. I want to know what you think they might do with the three big men, because I could see them trading. I don't know if they should, but Daniel Gafford's in an interesting position there. He's played unbelievable for them, although they have a young Derek Lively. They have Anthony Davis. Do you see maybe Gafford being moved this summer? He could be a big get for a lot of teams.
I could definitely see that, especially, I mean, his contract's a little bit more lucrative right now than what Lively's is. He's still on team control at a pretty cheap price. I'd definitely say Gafford would be in the running to be moved, because you've got P.J. Washington again, who's a power forward that you could slide Davis to center if that's something they decided to do. That's an interesting piece, and I was just looking here. They've got their first-round pick this year. They've got their first-round pick in 2026. They don't actually own the rights to their own first-round pick after that until 2031. And this was a team that, after this trade, Nico Harrison says that this trade sets them up for the long-term future. They didn't get any significant assets that sets them up in that way. They got no significant first-round pick that's going to help them elevate them into the next 10 years of the franchise like a guy like Luka Doncic can do. I agree with what you're saying. Kyrie, Anthony Davis, Max Christie, these guys, Lively, Klay Thompson, it's a good enough core that they are very capable of competing for a title when fully healthy. There's no doubt. We've seen it from Anthony Davis. We've seen it from Kyrie. These are guys that have pedigree in the finals. And I want to touch on a little bit about their game against the Lakers. We saw Luka Doncic return at Crypto.com to face the Dallas Mavericks, his home team. Got to show off a little bit, made a three, took a look at Jason Kidd, a little showboating. Nico Harrison sitting on the scoreboard before the game. People win their Luka Doncic jerseys. Kyrie explodes for 35. He shows you exactly what the Mavericks view him as. They're pretty much, I mean, he's the face of the franchise right now, and they're investing in him in that way. I think they will offer him a significant long-term extension, and I do expect him to re-sign there. I think he's got a really good relationship in Dallas. But touch on a little bit LeBron James, 27-12. He's been playing incredible, and we'll get into the Lakers here in a few minutes. The Mavericks saw exactly what a bunch of other teams have saw from Luka Doncic. Even though he has not been scoring the way that we expect Luka to score, he still goes for 19, 15, 12, triple-double on his former team. He shows how impactful he can be on the offensive side of the ball, and 15 rebounds from Luka. I mean, that's a statement. Like, they question his physicality, his conditioning. He goes and hustles for 15 boards. So I think that's just a way that he stuck it to him, even though he wasn't scoring the basketball like you'd expect from Luka.
Yeah, his shot has not been falling. I'll be the first to admit, as a huge Luka Doncic fan, his shot has not been falling since he's been with the Los Angeles Lakers, and I do believe it will come in time. But he became one of 3 players in NBA history to record a triple-double against every single franchise in the NBA, and he's only just turned 26 years of age. And it was definitely an emotional moment. You could see it from his interviews. You could see it from his body language. This game meant a lot to him. But overall, yeah, his shot has not been falling, but you could just see his impact. The behind the head pass he made to Austin Reeves was a thing of beauty. And I mean, overall, from a Dallas Mavericks viewpoint, they are going to regret this trade long term. I don't see how anyone could argue that point. And as we've touched on, I believe they should have gotten much more than they did. But this game, I do look towards the April matchup in Dallas, and hopefully we see some of these bigs return, although it's still uncertain as of now. So this game didn't mean a whole lot to me just because the Dallas Mavericks were so short-handed. And LeBron James, yeah, we'll touch on it in a minute. He's been unbelievable, especially playing off the ball. He's turned into, I mean...
Yeah, we can go ahead and get into that.
Yeah.
The LeBron James resurgence. I will be the first person to hate on this man. I'm the biggest hater of LeBron that there is on this planet. But you can't argue the fact his last 10 games or so. 28-13, 33-17, 27-12, 25-9-5, 40-8, 26-7-11, 18-6-7, 24-7-8, 42-17-8. He's playing over 35 minutes per game at the age of 40. The longevity, the sustainability that he's almost had a resurgence since this trade. And at the age that he is and the level that he's playing, it's unheard of. It's never been seen before. With the way that he's playing and getting Luka back when his shot starts falling, they're already sitting at third in the Western Conference. Nobody's going to tell me otherwise. The Lakers are a true title contender, and they're a title contender this year.
I agree, and this is due to how LeBron has been playing. I mean, he has just been unbelievable. You touched on his numbers. I think having him being able to play off the ball as LeBron this late in his career, we've seen he's better in these short spurts where he just explodes. And this is better for him because he doesn't have to stay on the ball, tiring himself out. I got to talk a little bit about how good he's been on defense. J.J. Redick is fighting for the fact he should be on the all-defensive team. If you sit down and watch these Lakers games, you will not see people be scoring in isolation on LeBron James anymore. He's locked in on the defensive end. He's drinking from the fountain of youth that's never been seen before. And, I mean, we just have to tip our cap to how he's been playing. And he's been playing at such an efficient level on top of that. I believe he may be shooting 40% from three in this season. He's turned – I saw a tweet made me chuckle a little bit. It said LeBron has turned around and turned into the best 3-and-D player in the league. And, I mean, it's almost hard to argue when he's hitting down 40% of his three-point shots. He's still obviously a great passer. But letting Luka play on the ball, this team – I would not want to see this. I could say that about a lot of Western Conference teams, but I damn sure would not want to see this Lakers team with LeBron playing at this level, knowing Luka hasn't had his shot falling just yet. It will come. He's going to have games where he explodes for 40, 50 points. And when he's not on, when Luka's not on the court, LeBron James is on the court. And then I like the way J.J. Redick has sort of handled the rotations where both of them start out together and then LeBron will come out, Luka will stay on, Luka comes out, LeBron comes on, and then they don't really play with each other a whole lot until the end of the game, which allows them to sort of take turns throughout the game. And I mean, what other team can say that they have these two top? LeBron's been a top 6 player in the league this year. I don't know his impact especially as of late. After this Anthony Davis injury, then led to the trade, he has just been unbelievable.
Yeah, we need to chill a little bit on the LeBron James defensive talk. He's not a great defender. He's had some moments where he puts in some effort, and there's been some highlight clips, but come on. It's LeBron. He's not playing a whole lot of defense in these games.
I mean, I'm not going to be the one to sit here and defend LeBron every single time, but he has been showing much more effort, and I do believe that is because
I will agree with that. There's been more. He's definitely played with a little bit more effort on defense, and I think that's apparent. And J.J. Redick has said it multiple times over in interviews, and you'll hear several media personalities talk about the impact that he's trying to make there. But two guys I wanted to really touch on, 3-and-D guys like you talked about. That's not LeBron, but 3-and-D guys, Rui Hachimura, Dorian Finney-Smith. I think we could talk about Hachimura the same way we talked about LeBron here. Since the trade, most of these games have been 20-point outings. He's making an impact that he hadn't previously made in his stint with LA, in a newfound role, taking on some of those minutes that Anthony Davis would be playing. He's playing up to 32 minutes a game now. Dorian Finney-Smith's knocking down 37% from his three-point line. The Lakers have so much depth. Again, we still don't know what the big guy situation is there. They've gotten a little bit of production of Jackson Hayes, and you even see moments where they throw LeBron down there and he's guarding big guys.
Yeah, a little beat up with some small injuries. Austin Reeves, a little either hamstring or calf he's dealing with, but he's considered day-to-day.
He's probably not going to play today.
Yeah, he may be out for a couple games. I could see them sitting him this whole week, potentially. Yeah. And then Rui Hachimura also left the game the other day with a slight knee injury, although I believe he's going to be just fine too. So they'll have a couple games here without those two. But, I mean, they only lost 2 games in February. But the interesting point to that is the 2 teams they lost to were Utah and Charlotte, who Charlotte's been getting blown out. So,
2 teams that are in the fight for the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I'm a little – they have got to be kicking themselves knowing that those were their 2 losses. But they've played a lot of playoff teams, and they've shown. I mean, they beat the Clippers, beat the Lakers, or beat the Nuggets, excuse me. But I want to talk a little bit about J.J. Redick and the staff around him. You got Nate McMillan, former Atlanta Hawks head coach, Scott Brooks, former Washington Wizards head coach, on the staff. Their game plans from an offensive and defensive standpoint have been second to none that we've seen, that I expected, I should say. When I first got the news that Dan Hurley turned down this Lakers job, they hired J.J. Redick, I thought, maybe it wasn't going to be the best fit. He probably would have fit better with a younger team where he could be a little more hard on them because of his intense. You could see that from his playing career. And so I thought he may be a little soft when he took this job, but I think he's been the opposite. He's not scared to hold people accountable. He will be upfront and honest with players, whether they're going to play or not, etc. For a first-year head coach, I think the Lakers hit a home run here with J.J. Redick so far.
We talked about it in the last episode about some of the Coach of the Year candidates. He might have my vote right now. I mean, Bickerstaff with the Pistons deserves a ton of credit, and we talked about Kenny Atkinson ad nauseum last episode. J.J. Redick, what they've done is incredibly impressive, and you see video. I think some of his inexperience helps him as a coach because he doesn't know any better.
Yeah,
he just goes from his same intense mindset that he had as a player. He just attacks the players. He tries to get the best out of them, and you see, just like you would see from a player, he still has a great relationship and the ability to connect in a locker room that you see from a lot of former players. There's videos surfacing about him, LeBron, laughing and having a good time on the sideline. His relationship with LeBron, his intensity, and you saw it as a player, the basketball IQ, and even as a broadcaster with ESPN in the last several years, you see the knowledge pour out, and it's really helping. And again, like you said, very wisely, the way he assembled his staff. They put money into it. They invested in it. They knew they had to get guys around him that were going to be able to help him out in that department. They've done it. It's been very impressive to see from the Lakers. The sky's the limit for them. They've got LeBron James, a top 10 player of all time. They've got Luka, who tracks to be one of the greatest players of all time. We touched on it a little bit. They're sitting at third. They've got the Clippers coming up tonight. Knicks, Celtics, Bucks, Nuggets twice coming up within the month of March. They've got a tough schedule coming up that we're going to see a lot about the Lakers they're going to have. I'm just looking here.
A lot of back-to-backs, too.
A lot of back-to-backs and a lot of primetime night games, like 10 or 11 primetime ESPN, ABC games coming up for them. They're going to be on TV a lot. You're going to see a lot about them. There's going to be a lot of news about them. The Lakers are not a team to keep an eye on, just like the Golden State Warriors. 7-1 now with Jimmy Butler. They lost last night as Jimmy Butler was sitting, as we see Quentin Grimes explode for 44 as the 76ers get a 126-119 win. The 76ers just announced Joel Embiid would be out for the rest of the year, likely seeking surgery on his knee. Regardless of this, because of Jimmy Butler being out, I don't take a lot of weight in it. But what I do take a lot of weight in is the fact that since he's got there, we've seen a Steph Curry reemergence, a revival, turning back the clock of time, just like we talked about with LeBron. 7-1 with Butler in the lineup. They're sitting at 7th in the Western Conference. They're a team that could make a push. I still think that if all the cards lay right for them, they're a sneaky title contender, and they might not even have to play in the play-in if they keep winning these games.
I do think as well as they're playing, they will slide into that 6th seed. And, Steph Curry's resurgence since this trade, his averaging up by 7 or 8 points. He's up to 30 points per game since the Jimmy Butler trade. But before that, he was only averaging 23 on 44% from the field and 38 from three, which, for most guys, that's pretty good. But for I would say a top 10 player ever, have him sitting at 10. I'm sure in a future episode, we will list out, the top 10. But I do have Curry sitting at 10th in my list. But we saw it last night. He had a 56-point game this week against a very good defensive team in the Orlando Magic. They were down by 15 points, I believe, at halftime, and he clawed them and outscored the Magic by himself in the third quarter, scoring 22 points in that third quarter. This team, Jimmy Butler brings a new energy to this team. He's been getting to the free throw line at a high amount, and then they were the lowest free throw shooting team in the entire NBA. And since Jimmy Butler, he's been getting to the free throw line. They still have some players coming back from injury that I'm sure you'll touch on, but I would find it hard that they will win it all. I don't see that, but because there's some teams that they will have some matchup issues, like the Los Angeles Lakers. Although I'm excited to see what they're going to do come playoff time, and I still think Curry can turn it on one more time. I won't write him off just yet because of what he's shown throughout his career. I'm not going to write him off. Overall, this team, this Jimmy Butler impact, and we all know about playoff Jimmy Butler and his ability to take over playoff series. And if he can do that again, Western Conference needs to watch out.
Yeah, you mentioned a few guys that are out for them right now. Jonathan Kuminga's been out for a good portion of 2025. That's a guy that's a 3-and-D wing. He makes an impact on both sides of the floor. They add him to the mix there. That's just another element and level that this team can get to. Trace Jackson-Davis, a versatile big man, has been out for a few games for him. They've got an emergence from Quentin Post, who, 16-9 his last game, 18-5 a game before that. They found something in him that they just picked him up, and he hasn't really played a whole lot until Trace Jackson's been in and out of the lineup. That adds something that's a little interesting. We'll see if he can continue doing that. But like you said, Jimmy Butler, there's a different intensity to this guy to bring. There's a will to win. There's something to say about the competitive nature of these players, the will to win, the understanding of what it takes to win. Obviously, Curry, Draymond, several of these guys that have been on championship teams for this team understand that. But Jimmy's a guy that when things are collapsing, they're double teaming Steph. He's a guy that can go one-on-one, get a basket. He's going to defend. I love the way that he's been playing for this team. They've gotten some good minutes out of Moses Moody as well. Looney's still there. Like you said, I think Steph Curry's probably top 10 now. And you can argue, depending on what happens this year, that he has a legit case for a top 5, 6, 7 player of all time when it's all said and done. One thing I find interesting is the future of Steve Kerr. I'm not sure what's left for Steve Kerr. He's showed some moments of doubt in his future coaching that I think would be interesting for this Warriors team. You saw Draymond during the All-Star break say that they had already talked to him about maybe being the head coach after Kerr was done. Do you have any thoughts about the future of Steve Kerr and if he's got one last magical coaching run in him?
Yeah, so Steve Kerr, I don't find it easy to say a lot of great things about Steve Kerr for multiple reasons, but strictly when it comes to basketball, I do think he's a little just overrated as a coach. And I mean, I saw it a little bit with the Team USA. I wasn't thrilled that he was the one leading it, and I believe that he's been, people are going to say he's a top, 5 coach ever just because of his resume. But I would say he would just be someone who is very thankful to have Stephen Curry by his side for so long. I don't know if anyone would consider him even a top 5 coach currently, like in the league right now. Would you? I mean,
I don't know that I would.
No, I don't think anyone would at this point. He's been passed up from a schema. I mean, maybe he could lean into like a Brad Stevens role because he's had some.
He's had some management.
I believe he was with the Phoenix Suns. He was either general manager or assistant general manager. So I do think his future is going to be uncertain with the way Curry's his age, but the Draymond thing, I hadn't put a whole lot of thought into him being a head coach. I don't know how that would go. I mean, the technicals he would be receiving would be insane, but I think his future is uncertain, and I believe he does hold them back just a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think when it collapses, it's going to fully collapse. You're going to see Curry, you're going to see Draymond, you're going to see all these guys kind of leave out the door at the same time, and they're going to leave their legacies on the line together. I will give Steve Kerr credit because we saw Mark Jackson not do a whole lot with a very similar Warriors roster, and I think because of the way that Kerr played as an off-ball shooter and coming off screens, I think he was able to dial up in some of those earlier Warriors years some action to get Curry and Clay a lot of three-point looks, and I think he was beneficial in those early Warriors runs. But like you said, I think now he's passed up. I wouldn't say he's really considered a top 5 to 10 coach right now. Definitely I wouldn't throw him up there all the time, even though he's got an incredibly impressive resume.
I want to ask you this one question, and I'm sure you hadn't put a ton of thought into it, but I think it'll be interesting to hear your response. Let's say Golden State wins the championship this year. How would Curry be viewed? I mean, I already have him sitting at 10 in my top 10. He's already got 4 championships, 2 MVPs. The one knock is I argue is the only one Finals MVP. But let's say he wins this year, gets another Finals MVP, 5 championships. Some people say he's the best point guard ever now. Magic also has 5 championships, 3 MVPs. I want to know your thoughts on where Curry would be ranked in if he gets his 5th championship this year, knowing what their ups and downs of the season.
There would be a lot of very tight conversations that you're going to throw him up there in the ranks of, like you said, Magic, Kobe, Shaq. Like, where does he, like, how do you compare the eras? There's going to be people that are Curry fans. We know a few of them who are pretty obnoxious about him. They'll throw him up there in the LeBron James discussion, probably. I mean, there's a knock on LeBron with his finals record. You can't argue the success that Curry's had in the finals. That's a very interesting discussion, and I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm with you. I think he's right there at that 10 spot-ish right now. If he wins another one, I think you can throw him into that, like I said, 5 to 8 range, potentially higher, depending on how you outlook and how you compare different generations. That's such an interesting conversation, and I think that's something that we could definitely dive into moving forward. But I think now I want to touch on another team that they tried to make a move, that they were even discussed in a potential deal with the Warriors at one point, with trading Kevin Durant back there, the Phoenix Suns. This team is a disaster. They suck. They just need to give up now, trade away Kevin Durant in the offseason. There's questions. A lot of Suns fans argue with you about this. Is Devin Booker a Phoenix Sun for life? I say get him out of town as soon as you can. Liquidate him. get assets from him, trade him to Houston, get all your draft picks back. This team is going nowhere. They lost to the Spurs without Wembanyama. They lost to the Raptors. These are teams that in those states are just, quite frankly, not very good. They're 4 games under 500. They're getting pressed right now by the Portland Trail Blazers. They're 3.5 games out of even being in the play-in conversation. Mike Budenholzer's having meetings with Booker telling him he needs to shut up when he's in the huddle. Your star player can't even have a voice because your head coach doesn't think he's getting his message across. This team needs to blow it up. They are a disaster. I'd like to know your thoughts on the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, I'm going to start with at the top. And Matt Ishbia, a young owner of the Phoenix Suns, he's been very, very aggressive in his tenure, trading for Kevin Durant, blowing it up to get a Bradley Beal, which at the time was interesting just because CP3 was continuing to have injuries, but he has sort of put them in a really bad spot, and I believe it ties into the Bradley Beal contract. I mean, whoever Bradley Beal's agent is, that dude is a genius. He is the only player in the league, I believe, other than LeBron, who has the no trade clause in the contract. I agree with you that this team is probably just needs to blow it up. I mean, Houston has all but came out and said at this point that they would be willing to trade for a Kevin Durant, and they even want Devin Booker more than they want Kevin Durant, and they've pretty much came out and said that through the tea leaves in the previous off seasons. I want to go back in time a little bit to the Phoenix Suns when they first acquired Kevin Durant. Or even before that, they were in the finals. They lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in 6 games. Next season, they blow it up at the deadline. They get rid of Mikal Bridges. They get rid of Cam Johnson and
27 first-round picks. It felt like they gave up the entire organization.
But then from there, they play the Clippers in the first round. Kawhi gets hurt, shocker, and they beat them. But Kevin Durant and Devin Booker were playing at an elite level offensively, which they always have, but their efficiency, especially in that series. And then the next series, they match up with Denver. They lose in 6 games to them because it was Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. If they don't go out and get you 35 to 40 points on over 60% shooting, they're losing the game. They've went through a number of coaches here. They went and got Frank Vogel, who I like. That didn't work. They fired him. Now they go get another former champion head coach, Mike Budenholzer, who beat the Phoenix Suns in his championship. He's looking like he may get fired. I mean,
yeah, he won't have a job after this year, most likely.
I mean, there's so many issues here that they have. I mean, their draft capital isn't great, obviously, but they have a chance to reset themselves because they have Kevin Durant, who the trade to the Warriors that was going to happen. This was going to happen. The only reason it did not happen was because Kevin Durant vetoed it last minute. And he explained so when he went on Draymond Green's podcast. But the Bradley Beal situation, he's been nothing but hurt. You got three players who Kevin Durant can play off the ball, but Bradley Beal and Devin Booker have to have the ball in their hands. They're not elite passers, and they have no big man. Nurkic was not great for them, and then now they've gotten rid of him. Ishbia's sort of put them in a bad spot due to his aggressiveness, and I believe their GM is I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He played with LeBron in Miami for
James Jones.
James Jones, yeah. But I'm going to blame a lot of this on Ishbia, and the Kevin Durant topic, I mean, we could get into that as well. Where is he going? He's 100% getting traded this offseason. And I agree, this team has really put themselves in a bad position. And my brother is a Phoenix Suns fan, so this is just absolutely great to see.
Just think about this. When the Wizards traded away Bradley Beal, who has $53 million and $57 million left after this year, when they traded him, they traded Bradley Beal and were able to get Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, the draft rights to Bilal Coulibaly, who's been very impactful for them, second-round picks from 24 to 2030, and first-round swaps in 24, 26, 28, and 30. You can't even, they're going to have to attach draft picks to get rid of Bradley Beal, and even then he's going to decline his no-trade clause and won't go anywhere. It's a complete organizational malfunction to trade for a guy that has this type of contract. At the time, he was an all-NBA, all-star caliber player, and you would think pairing him alongside Devin Booker and Kevin Durant that would give you a higher upside, but then you don't. You trade away Chris Paul, who was a perfect fit next to Devin Booker. He could orchestrate because Devin Booker's not a true one. Bradley Beal's not a true one. You've sacrificed the ability to keep DeAndre Ayton, even though that situation had soured. It's organizational malfunction, the fact that they are in the situation that they are in right now. It's hard to comprehend the team that had such a high upside that was in the finals. They make all these splashy moves when they don't have to. Cam Johnson would still be a perfect fit there. Mikal Bridges would still be a perfect fit there. If they were able to keep DeAndre Ayton, that would have been a good play there. They could have done it so much differently. I don't hate them for the Kevin Durant trade. I mean, if you have the opportunity to get a guy like that, but the fact that you gave up, I think it was 5 first-round picks and multiple swaps, plus these 2 guys that have proven to be winners in the league, it's a disaster. I truly...
Yeah. So
even if they say they went on even if they go on a run, they got the Timberwolves, Clippers, Nuggets, Mavericks, Grizzlies, Rockets, Kings, Lakers.
They are not going on a run.
All in a row, all playoff caliber teams. This team, what's the future for him?
Okay,
Could they even go on a run in the playoffs so they were to win even?
No.
I don't even think they're going to win 3 of those games I just mentioned.
So as far as winning for them, that's out of the picture. But they can set themselves up with a future of winning if they trade Kevin Durant, get as much as possible for him. Although with the way that they've done trades in the past, they've overpaid for different things, so I could see them maybe not getting a full. But I mean, even a Devin Booker. But I want to say Kevin Durant. Where is he going to go? I mean, Houston obviously has a lot of assets that they can give up to help Phoenix have some sort of future. Ime Udoka, he's the head coach of the Houston Rockets. I wonder how he would love or hate this move, because their team is so young. They've had so many high draft picks, and they've cashed them in on a Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, so many guys that they've had. But
I would think if I were them, you look at the young talent they have compared to the young talent that Phoenix had when they traded for Durant. You're going to have to shut out multiple of those guys probably. Plus, you're going to have to give Phoenix back all of their picks, which the Rockets back in time exchanged Brooklyn's first-round picks back to Brooklyn in exchange for these Phoenix picks. So now they kind of hold the card to the situation. I don't even know if the Rockets would covet Durant. They might be looking at Booker instead.
Yeah.
If I'm the Rockets, I don't know why I would want to do Kevin Durant. I mean, I think it would be a similar situation as what you just had in Phoenix, and a team that would make a ton of sense for Kevin Durant. He already vetoed. He could have gone to the Memphis Grizzlies and made them title contenders now, this year. They'd be one of the favorites. You got John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, Jalen Wells, Kevin Durant. You can't tell me that team is not a legit playoff contender, assuming John Morant stays on the court. That's a different conversation. They would have been a team. Timberwolves, there's been talk that the Mavericks want to try to figure it out, but like we talked about earlier, they don't own any of their first-round picks beyond 2026 until 2031. What is the cost to get Kevin Durant at age 36, whatever he is right now? And where would be a realistic landing spot that, one, would want him at the age and cost, and two, that Durant would go to and not veto like we've seen him do already?
Well, I think the Suns, based on their track record here, probably won't do the right thing. And I
Definitely
could
not.
see them trading him to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the reason I say that is just because of their assets. Although I do find it tricky for them just because they have so many guys that are young who are on their rookie deals.
The salary that's going to be.
The salary is going to be tricky for them. Although if they try and make a all-in run for if they end up don't winning it all this year, I from a basketball standpoint, I think it would definitely work. And he's been in Oklahoma City before. It makes a little too much sense, but I do worry about the salary. But if from a draft capital standpoint, they have every draft pick you can think of. They've gone on NBA 2K, played my league, and completely broken the system. And they have so many draft picks they can't even select all of them. So therefore, they're going to have to trade something. And maybe they will look into Kevin Durant, depending on how this playoff goes this summer. If they win the championship, I don't see them doing so. But
Just looking at it, like pulling it up here, like it's going to be a combination of you're going to have to do in the Hartenstein contract because that's a $30 million contract. Kevin Durant's making 51. You're going to have to probably throw in Caruso and Lou Dort. They're going to come out and ask for Ousmane Deng. They're going to come out and ask for Jalen Williams. They're going to come out. I think if I'm Phoenix, I'm getting Topic in this deal. We haven't seen him yet for the Thunder, but that's a guy coming out before his ACL injury. Has a lot of potential. AJ Mitchell is a guy that I'm asking for if I'm Phoenix. Kasey and Wallace is a guy I'm asking for. You obviously asked for Chet Holmgren, but I don't think you're getting Chet out of this deal. Obviously, they're not trading Shea. You can ask for Isaiah Joe, but you're going to have to match the contract. It's going to have to be Hartenstein plus two of those guys that I just mentioned, or you're going to have to combine like four of those guys to try to match salaries and get everything kind of lined out. It's a tricky situation to be in if you're Phoenix and the Thunder trying to make a deal like that. Would the Thunder even want him? Would he want to go back there? That's an interesting conversation, but there's so much to look into when you're looking into Phoenix, and I've spoke my piece. I think it's an organizational malfunction that they've gotten to this point, but I think now we should dive into a little bit what we're looking forward to in this week. Obviously, we talked about it ad nauseum a little bit earlier. The Nuggets Celtics, big one on ABC tonight.
No, at 1.
At 1 o'clock today. Joe Mazzulla just had his interview, and they said that Holiday and Porzingis out again tonight. Aaron Gordon, true game time decision. Don't have an update on that. It's going to be a heavyweight matchup. Another game that I've kind of circled, Golden State. We talked about them already. They've got a match with the Knicks coming up this week. OKC, Memphis, Knicks versus Lakers. Spurs, Kings, Fox's return to Sacramento. Even though the Spurs aren't very good right now, that's going to be a fun game to watch. And then Boston, again, another big-time game. They got the Lakers. It's going to be a good week of basketball. Is there any games that you've circled, you've looked at from this week that got you excited?
Obviously, looking at the Denver-Boston because of those matchups last year, everyone sort of thought that was maybe have been the finals last year. But, I'm going to go ahead and look at to Saturday, Lakers-Boston. Obviously, everyone knows the rivalry that this is. But a new look Luka with LeBron. I'm curious to see how Joe Mazzulla is gonna prepare his defense. But there's so many games this week. Like I said, great week of basketball as we're closing in towards the playoff. Teams are fighting for seedings, and the Lakers have a very tough schedule with lots of back-to-backs. Obviously, my Memphis Grizzlies play the Thunder, who we haven't beaten once this year. I'm sure we'll lose that one. We got Warriors Knicks tomorrow. You said that's going to be very interesting. Hopefully Jimmy Butler's playing in that game. But overall, I mean, I look for Denver's schedule here has been brutal. They need to keep winning as much as they can, hold on to that 2 seed, but the Lakers are right on their tail, and they just beat them. But, I mean, overall, just excited for another great week of basketball.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Another great week of basketball upcoming. And this was another episode of the Stateline Fast Break Podcast. Like we mentioned earlier, we appreciate y'all tuning in. Please provide us any feedback, and we will continue to look to make this podcast as good as we possibly can. Look forward to another episode coming out on Wednesday. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the lottery teams and a little bit of topic about the NBA ratings. Should be an interesting show that we talk about. Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap it up and get out of here?
I just want to say the support that we've had has been a little mind-blowing to me. So I'm very thankful that the fact people have sat down and listened to us and gave us feedback, and we need everyone to continue to do so. We want to have topics that people want to listen to. We're going to always listen to what our listeners are going to say. But overall, just love everyone out there who's listening to this, and I appreciate everyone doing so, and thank you.
With that being said, check our socials out: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Instagram, Twitter. Go check it all out at the Stateline Fast Break Pod. This has been another episode of the Stateline Fast Break Podcast, and we thank you for tuning in. See you next time.